I used to be a man who hunted people for money. Then I buried my wife and son, and I swore I'd never pull a trigger again. But when I found her bleeding in the desert, I knew that promise was about to break. The Arizona sun hung overhead like a branding iron pressed against the sky. Heat shimmered off the cracked earth, turning the distant mountains into ghosts. My horse moved slow beneath me, hooves crunching against ground that hadn't seen rain in months, maybe years. I had no destination that day, just riding. That's what I did now. Riding and waiting for something I couldn't name. 5 years of waiting, 5 years of punishing myself for sins I could never wash clean. Then I saw the vultures, three of them circling lazy against the pale sky. Patient, they had all the time in the world. Whatever they were waiting for wasn't going anywhere. Old instincts kicked in, the kind you learn hunting men across territories where death waits behind every rock. Could be an animal carcass, could be a trap set by outlaws, could be someone who needed help. I turned my horse toward the circling birds. The mesquite bushes grew thick near the dry riverbed. I almost missed her, just a shape half hidden in the shadows. Dark hair tangled with dust and dried blood. One leg twisted at an angle that made my stomach turn. She was Apache. I knew it the moment I got close. The beadwork on her torn dress, the faint tattoos visible on her sun-darkened skin. Chiricahua, if I had to guess. The most feared tribe in all of Arizona territory. My hand went to my Colt without thinking. Then I heard her breathe. Shallow, weak, but alive. I sat there on my horse for a long moment. The smart thing was to ride away. Helping an Apache meant trouble from every direction. White men would call me a traitor. Her people might kill me just for touching her. But I kept staring at that twisted leg, at the blood crusted in her hair, at the shallow rise and fall of her chest. I thought about Martha, about Eli, about all the times I wasn't there when someone needed me. I climbed down from my horse. She must have heard me coming. Her eyes snapped open as I knelt beside her. Dark eyes full of pain and fear and something else. Defiance. Even half dead in the desert, she was ready to fight. I reached toward her injured leg to examine the break. She gasped and pulled away, her whole body tensing despite the agony it must have caused. "No," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the hot wind. "It still hurts there." Those words hit me harder than any bullet ever had. This wasn't an enemy. This was a young woman clinging to life by her fingernails. Scared, hurt, alone. I raised my hands slow, showing her my empty palms. "I'm not going to hurt you," I said, "but that leg needs setting, and you need water. You'll die out here without help." She stared at me, searching my face for the lies she expected to find. I don't know what she saw there, but after a long moment, she gave a tiny nod. I tore strips from my flannel shirt and wrapped her wound. Battlefield medicine from 15 years ago. Gettysburg taught me things I never wanted to learn, but those lessons were keeping this girl alive now. She didn't scream when I lifted her, didn't cry out when I set her across my saddle, just gritted her teeth and endured, strong, stronger than men I'd seen with half her injuries. Later, she told me what happened. 3 weeks running through the desert after her village was destroyed. No food, little water, surviving on cactus fruit and sheer will. Then her horse spooked at a rattlesnake and threw her into a rocky ravine. She crawled for 2 days before her body finally gave out among those mesquite bushes. 2 days of crawling with a broken leg.
There's a knife on the table. Keep it with you for safety.
Why did you save me?
I'm an Apache because I was tired of watching others die without doing anything.
Most men would have given up after the first hour. The ride back to my ranch took 3 hours. 3 hours of sun beating down on us. 3 hours of her drifting in and out of consciousness. 3 hours of me wondering what the hell I was doing. I didn't know it then, but someone was watching. On the ridge a mile behind us, a man lowered his brass telescope. He wore a black duster and a hat that had seen better days. His smile never reached his cold eyes. 3 other riders sat beside him on dusty horses, along with a heavy-set man wearing a tarnished sheriff's star. "Well, well," the man in black said. "Silas Brennan, son of a bitch, is still alive." The sheriff frowned beneath his thick mustache. "You know him?" "Know him?" The man laughed. It was an ugly sound like gravel scraping against bone. He's the only man who ever beat me to the draw. This just got real interesting. His name was Virgil Cutter. He had been hunting the Apache girl for 3 weeks, and he never let a bounty escape. My ranch wasn't much to look at. A stone house I'd built with my own 2 hands, a barn that leaned a little in strong wind, a well that still gave good water even in the driest months, and 2 graves out back beneath an old cottonwood tree. I carried the girl inside and laid her on the bed. My bed, the one I'd shared with Martha before the winter fever took her. I hadn't slept in it since that terrible night. Couldn't bear to. The girl's leg was bad, broken clean below the knee. I'd seen worse in the war, men with legs blown half off by cannon fire, but not by much. I found my old medical kit buried in a trunk, splints I'd carved years ago, clean bandages, a bottle of whiskey that served better as medicine than drink. Setting the bone was ugly work. She bit down on a leather strap and made no sound louder than a grunt. Sweat poured down her face. Her hands clawed at the rough sheets. But she didn't scream. When it was done, she passed out from the pain and exhaustion. I pulled a chair to the corner and sat watching her breathe, wondering what I'd gotten myself into, wondering if I'd just signed my own death warrant. Outside the window, the sun sank below the purple mountains, and on the wall across from me, my Winchester rifle gathered dust beside my Colt Peacemaker. I hadn't touched either one in 5 years. I had a feeling that was about to change. She woke in the darkest part of the night. I heard her moving before I saw her, the rustle of sheets, the sharp intake of breath as pain reminded her exactly where she was and what had happened. Then silence, the dangerous kind of silence that comes before violence. "There's a knife on the table beside you," I said from my chair across the room. "Figured you'd feel safer with it in reach." More silence. Then the soft scrape of metal against wood as she palmed the blade. "Why?" Her voice was stronger now, still weak from her ordeal, but with a sharp edge to it. "Why what? Why help me? You're white. I'm Apache. Your people and mine have been killing each other for generations. Why not just leave me there to die?" I thought about the question, thought about all the pretty answers I could give her. Most of them would be lies. "I've seen too many people die while I did nothing," I finally said. Got real tired of it. She was quiet for a long time after that. I could hear her breathing in the darkness, thinking, deciding whether to trust me or put that knife between my ribs. Days passed slow as molasses. I fell into a routine that felt almost natural. Water in the morning when she woke. Food at noon that I cooked myself. Changing her bandages at night when the pain was worst. I always set things within her reach and stepped back to my corner. Never crowded her. Never made her feel like a prisoner. She watched me constantly. I could feel her dark eyes following my every move through the small house. Measuring, testing, waiting for the cruelty she'd been taught to expect from men who looked like me. It never came. On the 3rd night, the fever hit hard. I woke to the sound of screaming. Not words at first, just raw, animal sounds of terror and grief that raised the hairs on my neck. I grabbed my rifle before I fully
Aren't you afraid? Saving me will bring you trouble.
I've lived with trouble my whole life.
Then why are you still here?
Because this time, I choose not to leave.
understood the sounds were coming from inside the house. She was thrashing on the bed like something possessed. Sweat soaked clear through the sheets. Her eyes were wide open but seeing something far away and terrible. Something I couldn't protect her from. "Tahoe!" she cried out, the name torn from her throat. "Mother, no! Run! You have to run!" I set down my rifle and knelt beside her burning body, pressed a wet cloth to her forehead. Her skin was hot enough to fry eggs on. The fever dreams wouldn't release their grip. She lived through that night of blood and fire again and again. I caught pieces of it through her desperate screams, gunshots in the darkness, torches thrown onto lodge poles, people she loved cut down while she ran. I stayed with her through all of it, through the long hours when death circled close like those patient vultures, through the moments when her breathing grew so shallow I was sure she was slipping away. I changed the cloths on her forehead, dripped water between her cracked lips, talked to her in a low, steady voice even though she couldn't hear a word. I told her about Martha, about how her laugh could fill up a whole room, about Eli's first steps, and how proud he'd been when he finally figured out how his legs worked. About the winter of 1873 when the fever swept through like God's own vengeance. About coming home from a $200 bounty hunt to find 2 fresh graves behind my house and a silence that would never end. Maybe I needed to say it out loud after all these years. Maybe I thought if she heard that I understood loss, truly understood it in my bones, she'd find the strength to keep fighting. The fever broke just before dawn, painted the sky orange and pink. She opened her eyes and saw me slumped in the chair beside her bed. I must have looked like death warmed over. 3 days without real sleep will do that to any man. "You stayed," she whispered, her voice cracked and dry. "Yeah. The whole time? Yeah." Something shifted in her eyes, some wall coming down just a little. "My name is Naira," she said. "Silas. Silas Brennan." She closed her eyes again. "Thank you, Silas." She slept after that. Real sleep this time, the healing kind that knits broken things back together. I walked outside into the morning light and stood there watching the sun climb over the mountains, trying to remember the last time I'd been this bone-tired. Gettysburg, probably, after 3 days of watching good men die in ways I still saw when I closed my eyes. When I turned back toward the house, I noticed her watching from the window, not looking at me, looking past me, at the 2 wooden markers standing beneath the old cottonwood tree. A week later, Naira was strong enough to walk on her own. Barely. I'd carved her a crutch from seasoned mesquite wood, sanded smooth so it wouldn't blister her palm. She made her slow way to the door, then stopped cold. "The graves," she said quietly. "Who are they?" I should have expected the question sooner or later, but it still felt like a knife sliding between my ribs. "My wife Martha," I said, "and my son Eli. He was 7 years old." She didn't say she was sorry. I was grateful for that small mercy. I'd heard too many empty apologies and hollow condolences over the years. They just made the hole inside me bigger. What happened to them? Winter sickness, the fever that came through in 1873, took them both inside of 2 weeks. I wasn't here when it started. I was chasing a $200 bounty 3 territories away. By the time I got word and rode back, they were already in the ground. She limped toward the graves on her crutch. I followed a few steps behind. We stood there together in silence for a while, looking at the weathered wooden crosses I'd carved with my own shaking hands. I never could figure out what words to put on them. Everything I thought of seemed too small to hold what I'd lost. "You stayed," Naira said at last. "After they died. You stayed here alone all this time." "I stayed alive," I replied, the words tasting like ash. "Not the same thing." She turned her head to study my face. Something changed in her dark eyes. Understanding, maybe. Recognition of a fellow traveler on a hard road. "My people were attacked," she said, her voice tight with memory. 3 weeks ago. Men came at night with guns and torches. They shot everyone they could find. My mother told me to run, to survive, to bear witness. So I ran. Her hands curled into fists at her sides. I survived because I ran. The ones who stayed to fight, they didn't. I knew about loss. Knew it lived inside you like a second heartbeat that never stopped. Never let you forget for even one peaceful
Who are they?
My wife and son. I wasn't here when they needed me most.
You stayed.
No, I just existed.
moment. But hearing that same loss in her young voice made it real and raw again. How many, I made myself ask. 37. Men, women, children. Everyone I ever loved. The number hung in the hot air between us. 37 people. Mothers holding babies. Old men who remembered better times. Children who would never grow up. Who did it? Who led the attack? She looked at my arm, at the long scar that ran from my elbow to my wrist, the one I'd worn like a brand for 10 years. "Where did you get that?" she asked instead of answering. "A man named Virgil Cutter gave it to me. We used to ride together, long time ago. Had a disagreement over a bounty split. He tried to settle it with a knife. Her whole body went rigid as a fence post. Her hand found the knife at her belt and gripped the handle until her knuckles went pale. "Virgil Cutter," she repeated, each syllable sharp as broken glass. "He led the attack on my village. He shot my mother in the back while she was pushing me into the river to escape. The world went very quiet around us. I stared at her. She stared at me, and I finally understood why Virgil was hunting her so hard across the territory, why she was worth $500 to someone, dead or alive. She was a witness. The only one left alive who could testify to what really happened that night. I rode with Virgil 8 years ago, I said. My voice sounded strange and distant to my own ears. Before I met Martha, before I tried to become something better than what I was, I did things back then that I ain't proud of. Things that still wake me up at night. Did you kill my people? The question came out flat and cold as a frozen river, ready for violence if she didn't like the answer. I looked her straight in the eyes and told her the truth. No, I never rode against Apache villages, but I killed other people. Outlaws mostly, but not always. Sometimes I didn't ask enough questions about who I was hunting or why. I did it for money, and I can't ever wash that blood off my hands, no matter how hard I scrub. She didn't lower the knife right away, but she didn't use it either. We stood there among the graves of my family and the ghost of hers, two broken people held together by loss and circumstance, and something that might have been the beginning of trust. The wind blew hot across the empty land, carrying the smell of dust and creosote. Then I saw the dust cloud rising on the road to the east. 4 riders, moving slow and deliberate across the shimmering desert. The way men move when they want you to see them coming and have time to be afraid. I recognized the lead rider's posture before I could make out his face. Some things you never forget, no matter how hard you try. The way a man sits his horse, the angle of his shoulders, the particular kind of confidence that comes from killing without hesitation or consequence. Virgil Cutter had found us. "Get inside," I said. "Now!" Nara didn't waste breath arguing, just turned and limped toward the house as fast as her healing leg would carry her. I walked to the wall where my Winchester had been gathering dust for 5 long years. The weight of it felt strange in my hands, familiar and foreign at the same time, like meeting an old friend you'd hoped never to see again. I loaded 15 rounds into the magazine, checked my Colt and made sure it would clear the holster clean, positioned myself at the window with a clear field of fire. Virgil stopped about 200 yards out, just far enough to make a rifle shot tricky in the heat shimmer. Just close enough to shout and be heard. "Silas Brennan!" His voice carried across the empty land like a curse. "Well, I'll be damned. Thought you drunk yourself to death years ago." I didn't give him the satisfaction of an answer. "That Apache girl you got in there is worth $500 to the mining company. Dead or alive, don't matter to them." He paused for effect. "Hand her over and I'll give you 200 for your trouble. We forget this whole thing ever happened. For old time's sake." "Ride away, Virgil." My voice came out steady, calmer than the pounding of my heart. "This is the only warning."
My heart still hurts.
The wound hasn't healed completely.
Not that wound.
Then let's fix it. Not alone.
"You'll get from me." Virgil laughed. That same ugly laugh I remembered from years ago, like stones rattling in a dry well. The one that always meant someone was about to bleed. "Still playing the hero? That's rich coming from you." He shook his head in mock disappointment. "Fine then. Have it your way. You got until sunrise tomorrow. After that, we come in shooting and burn that place down to the foundation with both of you still inside." He turned his horse and rode back the way he came, unhurried as a man out for a Sunday ride. His 3 men followed in a loose formation, not retreating, just repositioning, waiting for reinforcements. I watched them go until the dust swallowed them up. Counted the riders again. 4 now. But Virgil never worked with just 3 guns. There would be more coming. There always were. "Behind me," Naira spoke softly. "You could ride away tonight. He wants me, not you. There's no reason for you to die over this." I kept my eyes on the distant heat shimmer where Virgil had vanished. When Martha and Eli needed me most, I was 3 territories away chasing blood money. Couldn't save them. Wasn't even there to hold their hands at the end. I paused, feeling the old guilt twist in my chest. I won't make that mistake twice. Not ever again. They came in the darkest hour before dawn, when the stars were fading, but the sun hadn't yet shown its face. I should have expected them. Tahoe and his surviving warriors had been tracking Virgil Cutter for 3 weeks straight, ever since the massacre, following his trail of blood and campfire ash across the territory. When Virgil's gang stopped outside my ranch, they followed and watched from the shadows, waiting for the right moment. 6 shapes materialized out of the darkness, like vengeful spirits. Not from the road where I expected Virgil's attack, from behind where the rocky hills provided cover. I had my rifle up and aimed before I fully registered they weren't Virgil's men, Apache warriors. Armed with rifles and long knives and a kind of cold fury in their eyes that I recognized all too well. The fury of men who have lost everything that mattered and have nothing left to fear except dying without revenge. Their leader stepped forward into the faint starlight, young, maybe late 20s, built lean and hard like rawhide stretched over iron. There was something familiar about his face that I couldn't quite place, something in the set of his jaw, in the shape of his eyes. Then Naira made a sound beside me, something between a gasp and a sob that seemed to come from the deepest part of her soul. Tahoe! The warrior froze mid-step. His eyes went wide with shock. Naira? His voice cracked on her name. Little sister, you're alive? I saw you fall into the river. I thought you were dead too. Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling. I saw you go down fighting. I was sure. She limped toward him on her crutch. He met her halfway across the dusty yard. They didn't embrace the way white folks might. That wasn't the Apache way. But they stood close enough to touch, drinking in the sight of each other. 2 people who had each buried the other in their hearts and now faced a miracle. 5 of us survived, Tahoe said when he could speak again. We've been hunting Virgil Cutter ever since. We swore on our mother's blood that he would pay for what he did. His eyes moved past his sister to where I stood with my rifle still half raised. The warmth drained out of his face like water from a cracked pot. Why is my sister in a white man's house? He saved my life, Naira said before I could answer. Found me dying in the desert with a broken leg and no hope. Carried me here on his own horse. Set my bones. Fought off my fever when I was burning up. He's not like the others, Tahoe. He's white. They're all the same underneath. He's not. Tahoe's hand rested on his rifle, finger near the trigger. How can you know that for certain? I spoke up then, keeping my voice calm and level. I was one of them once upon a time. Rode with Virgil Cutter years ago, before I understood what he truly was. Left that life behind when I got married and tried to build something decent, tried to become a different kind of man. I met Tahoe's hostile glare without flinching, but Virgil's coming at sunrise with 8 guns, maybe more, to kill your sister. You can decide what to do with me after we deal with him. The silence stretched out thin and dangerous as a razor's edge. Tahoe's warriors shifted their weight, hands tight on their weapons. One wrong word and this yard would run red with blood. Then Tahoe nodded once, sharp and decisive, like a man who's made up his mind. We kill Virgil first, then we talk about you. We had maybe 4 hours until dawn. 4 hours to prepare for 8 or more armed killers who wanted nothing more than to see us all dead and buried. I showed Tahoe the layout of my land, the natural choke points where attackers would have to bunch up, the angles of fire from every window and doorway. We set tripwire alarms in the brush using old cans filled with pebbles, dug shallow rifle pits where his warriors could take cover and still have clear shots. Established overlapping fields of fire so no approach would go uncovered. Tahoe watched me work with something like grudging respect, slowly replacing the suspicion in his eyes. You know how to prepare a killing ground, he observed. Gettysburg, July of 1863. 3 days of hell on earth taught me things I never wanted to know. 60,000 men dead when the smoke cleared, and for what? I shook my head at the memory. Some lessons cost too damn much. My people have a saying, Tahoe replied. The blood of enemies makes the ground fertile for those who survive. I never truly understood what it meant until Virgil came to our village. I looked at him in the pale starlight, at the fresh scars on his arms from the massacre, at the cold purpose burning in his dark eyes. Revenge won't bring them back, I said quietly. won't fill the empty spaces they left behind. No, he agreed, but it will let their spirits rest. And mine. I couldn't find words to argue with that. The sun crept over the eastern mountains, painting the desert sky in shades of blood red and burnished gold, like a warning of what was to come. Virgil came with the dawn, just as he'd promised. 8 men riding in a loose skirmish line, spreading out to cover more ground. All of them armed with rifles and pistols and the casual confidence of men who'd done this kind of dirty work before. Then I saw the second dust cloud approaching from the north. Sheriff Harlan Briggs. 5 more riders wearing deputy badges that gleamed in the early light, coming to back up Virgil's play with the color of law. 13 men now, against 7. The odds had shifted hard against us. Virgil rode forward alone, stopping just close enough that we could see his yellowed smile. Last chance, Silas. Send out the Apache girl and you walk away free and clear. Hell, I'll even throw in $100 for your trouble. I sighted down my Winchester, putting the front bead right on Virgil's chest. You know I can put a bullet through your black heart from here. Haven't lost my touch. Maybe you can, he allowed with a shrug. But my boys will burn this place down around your ears. And Sheriff Briggs here has sworn in all my men as legal deputies. Kill any of us, and you're killing officers of the law. They'll hang you high and leave your body for the crows. Smart. Virgil had always been dangerously smart. That's what made him so hard to kill. Tahoe's warriors were hidden in their rifle pits. Virgil had no idea they were here. That was our only edge, thin as it was. I made my decision in a heartbeat. Wait for my signal, I whispered to Tahoe. Then I set down my rifle and walked out the front door into the open. Virgil's smile widened into something truly ugly. Finally seeing sense, old friend? I kept walking until I stood alone between the 2 forces. No cover, no weapon in hand, just me and the rising sun at my back. Sheriff Briggs, I called out, loud enough for everyone to hear clearly. You know what the U.S. Marshals do with lawmen who help massacre innocent civilians, women and children included? Briggs shifted uncomfortably in his saddle, his hand moving away from his pistol. They hang them, I continued, letting the words sink in. String them up right next to the killers they protected. Slow strangulation, not a clean drop. Takes about 20 minutes to die that way. Shut your mouth, Brennan, Virgil snarled, but I kept talking right over him. That Apache girl in there is the only living witness to what happened at that village. Kill her, and the marshals will never stop asking questions. Never stop digging into what really happened and who paid for it. But let her live. She testifies against Virgil and the mining company that hired him. Not against you, Sheriff. You could even claim you helped bring him to justice. Briggs looked at Virgil with new eyes, calculating, weighing his options. This wasn't part of our deal, Cutter. Don't be a gutless coward, Virgil spat. We finish this now, and no one ever knows the truth. Everyone will know, I cut in hard, because I'll make damn sure of it. I'll ride to Tucson, to Phoenix, to Washington itself if I have to. I'll tell every newspaper, every marshal, every territorial judge exactly what happened here. Your name will be poison, Briggs. Everything you've built in this territory will burn to ash. The sheriff's hand moved even further from his gun. I ain't swinging from a rope for your mistakes, Cutter. This is finished. Virgil's face twisted with rage, a lifetime of cruelty and violence bubbling up to the surface. You spineless, yellow-bellied... His hand streaked toward his Colt. Mine was faster. The gun cleared my holster before conscious thought caught up with muscle memory. Old skills that had kept me alive through 100 desperate moments. The kind that never truly die, no matter how deep you try to bury them. My bullet took Virgil square in the chest. He rocked back in his saddle, a look of pure surprise on his weathered face. Then he tumbled sideways and hit the hard ground with a thud that seemed to echo across the silent desert. For a long, frozen moment, nobody moved or breathed. Then Tahoe and his warriors rose from their hidden positions like avenging ghosts. Rifles aimed and ready, 5 against the remaining 12, but with surprise and righteous fury on their side. Virgil's hired guns looked at each other, looked at their fallen leader bleeding out in the dust, looked at the Apache rifles pointed at their hearts. They chose to live. One by one, gun belts hit the ground. Briggs ordered his confused deputies to take Virgil's men into custody, already rehearsing, probably, the story he'd tell about how he bravely helped stop a wanted murderer. I walked to where Virgil lay. He was still breathing. Barely. Blood bubbled on his pale lips with each shallow, gurgling breath, but his eyes were open and aware, filled with hatred and disbelief. Tahoe appeared at my shoulder, knife already in his hand, blade gleaming in the morning light. "He killed our mother," Tahoe said, his voice thick with barely controlled rage. "He slaughtered 37 of our people like animals. This death belongs to me." I didn't move to stop him, had no right to, but Naira did. "No!" She limped forward on her crutch, putting herself between her brother and the dying man. "Let him live long enough to stand trial. Let him face a judge and jury. Let the whole territory, the whole country, know exactly what he did and who paid him to do it. He deserves to die screaming in agony. Yes, he does, but our people deserve justice more. Real justice. The kind that echoes through history. The kind that warns others never to do this again." She put her hand on her brother's arm. "A quick death is mercy, Tahoe. Don't give him that." Tahoe's jaw clenched so tight I could hear his teeth grinding. His grip on the knife turned his knuckles bone white. Then slowly he lowered his hand to his side. "You've grown wise, little sister. Wiser than me. I've grown tired of death. There's a difference." They took Virgil away in chains, loaded into a wagon like the animal he was. The doctor Briggs sent for said he'd probably live, long enough to face trial and hang legally at least. Justice delayed but not denied. Tahoe's warriors gathered their gear and their wounded. 2 had taken bullets during the brief exchange of fire. Neither wound was serious, more blood than damage. They'd carry scars, but they'd live to tell the story. As they prepared to ride out, Tahoe approached me one final time. We stood face to face in the morning sun, 2 men from different worlds who had fought side by side. "You handled yourself well," he said, "for a white man. Had plenty of practice staying alive." He didn't smile, didn't offer his hand in the white man's custom, but he nodded once, slow and deliberate, a warrior's acknowledgement of another warrior who had proven his worth. "My sister sees something in you that I don't fully understand. She says you're different from others of your kind, that you carry wounds of your own that have changed you." He paused and studying my face. "I trust her eyes more than my own. She's always seen people clearly, even when the rest of us were blind." He turned to Naira, who had limped over to stand beside me. "Come home with us, little sister. Our people need you now more than ever. We need to rebuild, to heal, to remember those we lost." She looked at her brother, love and conflict warring in her dark eyes. Then she looked at me. Then at the 2 graves beneath the cottonwood tree, where Martha and Eli slept their eternal sleep. "I'll come home," she said at last. "I promise I will, but not yet. There's going to be a trial, and they need my testimony to make sure Virgil hangs, to make sure the mining company that paid for the massacre faces consequences. I have to see it through." Tahoe studied her face for a long moment, reading something there that I couldn't see. "And after the trial? What then?" She didn't answer with words, just glanced at me sideways, then back at her brother. Tahoe sighed, but there was no anger in it, only acceptance. "Be safe, little sister, and be certain of your path." He mounted his horse in one fluid motion. "We'll be waiting when you're ready to come home." The Apache warriors rode east toward the rising sun, disappearing into the shimmering heat until they were nothing but memory and dust. Naira and I stood alone in front of my battered house. Bullet holes pocked the stone walls like smallpox scars. One window was shattered, jagged glass catching the light. The front door hung crooked on its hinges, creaking in the hot breeze. "Needs fixing," I said, for lack of anything better. "Yes, quite a lot of work ahead." We stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the dust settle and feeling the morning heat build toward another scorching day. 2 people who had stumbled into each other's broken lives and somehow found reason to keep breathing. "I should go with Tahoe," Naira said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. "Probably should. My people need me." "They do." "But," she trailed off, struggling to find words for something that didn't fit neatly into language. She turned to face me directly, those dark eyes that had seen so much horror, still carrying pain, but something else now too. Something that hadn't been there the day I found her dying in the desert. She pressed her hand flat against her chest, over her heart. "It still hurts here," she said softly. I frowned, concern cutting through my exhaustion. "Your leg. Did you tear something open during the fight?" "No." She shook her head slowly. "Not that wound. A different one. One I've carried since the night my world burned." She paused, searching for the right words. "It's been hurting for 3 weeks straight, but standing here right now with you, it hurts a little less." I understood then what she was trying to say, because I felt it too. That hollow ache I'd carried for 5 years, the one I thought would never ease, had somehow grown quieter over these past days. I reached out and touched her hand, just for a moment, gentle as I knew how. The first time I'd touched another person with anything like tenderness since Martha drew her last breath. "Then let's fix that," I said, "together." She didn't pull away. We stood there as the sun climbed higher, our shadows stretching out toward the 2 graves beneath the cottonwood tree. Martha and Eli resting peaceful at last. I liked to think they wouldn't mind, that they'd want me to find some small piece of happiness in whatever years I had left. "The trial's set for Tucson," I said eventually. "About 3 months from now, according to Briggs." "Yes. Long ride through dangerous country. Virgil has friends who won't be happy about what happened here today." "I know." I looked at my Winchester, still leaning against the doorframe where I'd set it down, at my Colt, heavy on my hip where it belonged. "Guess I better clean these proper then, and lay in extra ammunition." Something shifted in her face. Not quite a smile, but close enough. The first light I'd seen in her eyes that wasn't pain or anger or grief. "Guess you better. Some debts can only be paid in blood." That's a hard truth I learned young and never forgot. But some debts are different. Some you pay by choosing to live again when part of you died and got buried, by choosing to face the pain head on instead of running from it or drowning it in whiskey, by choosing not to stand alone when the darkness comes calling. I buried my wife and son 5 years ago beneath that old cottonwood tree. Part of me went into the ground with them, and I figured it would stay there until I joined them for good. I was just marking time, waiting to die. Then I found a wounded Apache girl in the desert, more dead than alive. And she found something in me I thought was long gone forever. The road ahead won't be easy. Virgil's mining company has powerful friends in high places who won't let this go quietly. The trial will be dangerous, with enemies around every corner. And there's no guarantee any of us will live to see the verdict. But for the first time in 5 years, I want to find out what happens next. I want to see another sunrise. That's got to count for something. 3 months later, the trial was set for Tucson. The territorial courthouse was packed with reporters from as far away as San Francisco. But Virgil Cutter's employers weren't about to let an Apache woman bring down their empire. They'd already sent someone far more dangerous than bounty hunters or corrupt sheriffs. They'd sent a United States senator with blood on his hands and secrets to protect. But that's a story for another time. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that it's never too late to start over, that healing is possible even when the wounds run deep. Subscribe for more Western tales of courage, redemption, and the unbreakable human spirit. Until next time, keep riding toward the horizon.
The story leaves a profound lesson about humanity, redemption, and the ability of people to heal, even when they have strayed far from the light. The man, once a predator driven by greed, represents individuals burdened by past mistakes, decisions made amidst poverty, violence, and the indifference that developed over the years. After the death of his wife and child, he not only lost his family, but also his sense of purpose. He exists, but doesn't truly live, burdened by guilt for not being there when the most important people needed him. This emptiness drives him to wander the desert, waiting for something he himself cannot name. The appearance of the injured Apache girl is the biggest turning point in the story. In a moment of confrontation between fear, prejudice, and old instincts, the man chooses to be human before being a survivor. He could have turned his back for his own safety, but he chose to bend down and help because he realized that the pain of others reflected his own. The great lesson here is, sometimes, the only way to save yourself is to save others. This act of compassion not only saved the girl's life, but also pulled the man out of the abyss of guilt and despair he had been trapped in for years. The story also emphasizes that violence cannot heal violence, even if it may provide temporary satisfaction. When confronted with the perpetrator of the massacre, the girl's choice, to let the law and truth speak instead of revenge, demonstrates a power greater than bullets. It is the power of reason, of looking beyond personal pain to protect the honor of the deceased and the future of those who remain. Ultimately, the story affirms that healing does not come from forgetting the past, but from facing it with courage and honesty. Two people from two opposing worlds found common ground, not because they were alike, but because they had both suffered so much loss. The greatest lesson the story conveys is, it's never too late to choose a different path in life, to stand on the side of what is right, and to believe that, after all the devastation, people can still learn to live on, more kindly, more bravely, and more humanely.